this demonstration, we wanted to look at how the PuraMaize gene works, but we wanted to enforce very stringent conditions to test the PuraMaize. And so what was done in this nursery block is we were looking at various PuraMaize hybrids and then a normal hybrid that was very similar to or close to the same pedigree, but without the PuraMaize gene in it. So for all these plants, they were all hand-pollinated, actually hand-pollinated twice. Each ear, as it was emerging, before the silks emerged, was covered to keep it protected. So the only pollen that reached those silks was the pollen that we manually put on by hand. Now these two rows where you see almost all yellow, these were both PuraMaize rows. This hybrid, it'll be sold in 2011. And the procedure was, I used a blue pollen source that is creates a dominant blue color. In other words, if pollen from that plant hits a silk and a successful fertilization occurs, then the resulting kernel will be blue or dark purple. And so for these plants, all of these plants were initially covered with blue pollen, and that blue pollen was left on for 24 hours, and then the next day, and then the silks were recovered after I put the blue pollen on, and then the next day I pollinated the same silks with pollen from the PuraMaize row. And as you can see, the blue pollen didn't take, the PuraMaize pollen did take, and you do have a few purple kernels, and I'll come back to that in a moment. Here's the alternative. These were the similar genotype, but normal plants. And here you see when the blue pollen was put on, pretty much fertilization was successful, and you have a resulting, almost the whole ear is blue or purple. Now, what these caps represent is the pollen growth that occurred after I put on the initial blue pollen. Then in the succeeding 24 hours before I put on pollen from its own row, then some additional silks grew out, and that's what you see with the yellow caps. Now, in this sort of test, this stringency is anywhere from 100 to 1,000 times whatever these corn plants would face in a normal situation in a farmer's field. And it is a natural system. It is not absolutely perfect. And you can see that with enough of a head start, every now and then a blue kernel does successfully pollinate on these PuraMaize lines. But the number of blue kernels, as you can see in this genotype, is very, very low. And again, this is when this is with blue pollen that was put on and then had a chance to try and grow down those silks for 24 hours in a non-competitive situation. This is the normal counterpart with that same blue pollen put on and given a 24-hour head start. So in a normal setting, you wouldn't have foreign pollen coming in, hitting the silks with no PuraMaize pollen around. You would have both pollen sources, assuming that there was blow-in contamination from a GMO source. You'd still have the pollen from the PuraMaize also there. And in our experience, when both pollen is put onto the silks at the same time, then you'd see no blue or no foreign contamination.